Carl Jung stood at the pinnacle of psychiatric achievement in the early 20th century. Colleague of Freud, founder of analytical psychology, respected scientist of the mind. Yet, for 16 years, this man worked in secret on something that would have destroyed his reputation had anyone discovered it. Behind the locked door of his study, Jung filled page after page of a massive leather-bound manuscript with visions, paintings, and dialogues that resembled the work of a medieval mystic. The book itself was an artwork, red leather binding, Gothic calligraphy written by Jung's own hand. Illustrations of serpents, mandalas, and otherworldly beings that seemed to pulse with their own life. He called it Liber Novus, the new book, but history would remember it as the Red Book. After Jung died in 1961, his family faced a dilemma. This manuscript contained the raw, unfiltered record of Jung's journey through territories of mind that many would call madness. They locked it in a Swiss bank vault, where it remained for nearly 50 years. When the book finally emerged in 2009, the psychological community was stunned, to say the least. Here was Carl Jung, the founder of concepts like introversion and extroversion, the collective unconscious, and psychological types, revealing that his theories had emerged from his own descent into psychic depths, a journey so intense it nearly destroyed him. The Red Book contained the hidden source of analytical psychology itself. Every major concept Jung would later develop appeared first in these visions: the shadow, the anima and animus, the process of individuation, the self with a capital S, all of it born from nights when Jung sat alone, eyes closed, allowing his mind to sink into territories most people spend their lives avoiding. What makes the Red Book so unsettling is its beauty. Jung painted mandalas before he understood what mandalas meant. He drew cosmic trees whose branches formed patterns he couldn't interpret. He recorded conversations with figures who seemed to know things Jung himself didn't know. The whole manuscript reads like a transmission from another world, which, in a sense, it was. The visions started in October 1913. Jung was 38 years old, professionally successful, personally troubled. His break with Freud had left him isolated from the psychoanalytic community. His marriage was strained. Europe itself seemed to be sleepwalking towards catastrophe. The first vision came while he was traveling. Jung saw a monstrous flood covering all of northern Europe. The waters turned to blood. Thousands of bodies floated in the crimson tide. The Alps grew higher, protecting Switzerland, while everywhere else lay devastation. The vision returned again and again, each time more vivid, more terrible. A psychiatrist experiencing such visions might reasonably diagnose himself with psychosis. Jung knew the symptoms of schizophrenia intimately. He had treated many patients who reported similar experiences. Yet something told him these visions were different. They carried a quality of significance, of meaning that demanded attention rather than medication. And so Jung made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He would engage the visions directly. He developed a technique he called active imagination, deliberately inducing a state between walking and sleeping, where the unconscious could speak without interference from rational thought. Every night after his family went to bed, Jung would descend to his study. He would sit in his leather chair, close his eyes, and let himself sink. "I let myself drop," he later wrote. It was like a descent into dark depths. He would encounter figures, landscapes, entire worlds that seemed to exist independently of his conscious creation. First, he recorded everything in his black books, his rough drafts. Then he carefully transcribed and illustrated the visions in the Red Book. The process terrified him. Jung wrote about the fear of losing himself completely, of never finding his way back to ordinary consciousness. He kept his professional life rigorously separate from these experiments. During the day, he saw patients, wrote scientific papers, maintained his reputation. At night, he became an explorer of inner worlds that psychology had barely begun to map. One entry from December 1913 captures the intensity. "My soul, where are you? Do you hear me? I speak. I call you. Are you there? I have returned. I'm here again. I have shaken the dust of all the lands from my feet and have come to you. I'm with you. After long years of long wandering, I have come to you again." The figures Jung met in his visions had consistency, personality, knowledge that seemed to come from beyond Jung's conscious mind. The most significant was Philemon, an old man with bull horns and kingfisher wings who became Jung's inner teacher. Philemon spoke to Jung about the nature of thoughts, claiming they were like animals in a forest or people in a room. They had their own life, their own reality. "If you should say people in a room," Philemon said, "you would not think that you had made those people, or that you were responsible for them." This revolutionized Jung's understanding of the psyche. Mental contents were autonomous entities with their own existence. Then came Salome, a beautiful blind woman who appeared alongside a black serpent. She embodied what Jung would later call the anima, the feminine aspect of the male psyche, seductive, dangerous, wise, and completely other. Through dialogues with her, Jung began to understand how men carry an inner feminine that, when unrecognized, projects itself onto actual women with often destructive results. The Red Book contains Jung's paintings of these encounters. One particularly haunting image shows a figure Jung called Isdubar, a dying god whom Jung must heal. The god is massive, cosmic, made of stars and void. Jung realizes he can heal the god by understanding that Isdubar is fantasy, is psychic reality rather than physical reality. This becomes a crucial moment in Jung's understanding. The psyche has its own reality, its own laws, its own forms of existence. Jung's conversations with these figures fill hundreds of pages. They discuss the nature of God, the meaning of evil, the relationship between spirit and matter. Often, the figures know things Jung doesn't know. They make predictions that later come true. They speak in languages Jung doesn't understand, using symbols he must research to comprehend. Jung understood the danger he was getting into. "Beware of unearned wisdom," he wrote in the Red Book. He stood at a knife's edge where psychiatry would diagnose psychosis, while mystics would recognize initiation. He admitted fearing for his sanity. In one entry, he writes, "I have awakened a nameless fear in you. You feel as if you've faltered, but you've not. You've moved closer to the core of the world." The "you" here is Jung addressing himself, trying to maintain some observer perspective while experiencing states that threatened to overwhelm his sense of self entirely. What saved Jung was his method. He didn't simply surrender to the visions. He engaged them actively. He questioned the figures he met, argued with them, demanded clarity. When a figure claimed to be Elijah, Jung asked for proof. When Salome tried to seduce him into blind acceptance, he maintained his critical distance. This active engagement, this insistence on relationship rather than possession, kept him from drowning in the unconscious. The visions also had an uncanny relationship with external events. The flood of blood Jung saw in 1913, World War I erupted in 1914, and Europe was indeed flooded with blood. His personal descent into darkness coincided with Europe's descent into the hell of mechanized warfare. Jung came to believe that individual psychology and collective events were connected in ways science couldn't yet explain. This became the foundation of his idea of individuation, the lifelong process of integrating shadow, anima, animus, and self. The visions of the Red Book transformed Jung's professional work. He began speaking differently to his patients, listening for the mythic dimensions of their sufferings. A woman's depression might be Persephone's descent to the underworld. A man's midlife crisis might be the hero's call to adventure refused. He also discovered that his patients often dreamed or fantasized about images strikingly similar to his own. Mandalas appeared spontaneously in the drawings of people who had never seen Eastern art. Snake symbols emerged in the dreams of patients who knew nothing of ancient mythology. This led Jung to his theory of the collective unconscious, a layer of psyche shared by all humanity, containing the archetypes that shape our deepest experiences. He developed new therapeutic techniques based on his Red Book experiments. Active imagination became a tool he taught patients, helping them dialogue with their own inner figures. Dream analysis expanded beyond personal associations to include archetypal amplification, connecting individual dreams to universal myths and symbols. The shadow work that Jung pioneered came directly from his encounters with his own dark side in the Red Book. He met figures that embodied everything he rejected in himself: violence, sexuality, chaos, irrationality. Rather than fleeing these encounters, he learned to face them, to dialogue with them, to integrate their energy without being possessed by it. One patient, a businessman suffering from severe anxiety, began practicing active imagination under Jung's guidance. He encountered an inner figure who appeared as a primitive man, wild and violent. Through months of inner dialogue, the patient discovered this figure carried his repressed vitality, his unlived life. As he integrated this shadow figure, his anxiety decreased and his life gained new energy and meaning. Jung's descent shines through millennia of human spiritual experience. In Sumerian myth, Inanna descends to the underworld, stripped of her royal garments at each of 7 gates, until she stands naked before death itself. Only after dying and being reborn can she return to the upper world transformed. Greek mysteries enacted similar descents. Initiates at Eleusis experienced a symbolic death and rebirth, emerging with the promise that death was not the end. Orpheus descended to Hades, seeking his beloved Eurydice, learning that some losses can only be accepted, never reversed. Shamanic traditions worldwide speak of the wounded healer, the one who must first be torn apart by spirits before being reassembled with the power to heal others. The shaman's illness is initiation. The breakdown is breakthrough. What looks like madness from outside is transformation from within. Jung's journey belongs to this ancient lineage. His Red Book is a modern mystery text, a record of initiation into depths of psyche that Western civilization had forgotten existed. He wrote, "The spirit of the depths forced me to speak to my soul, to call upon her as a living and self-existing being." The difference is that Jung documented his initiation with scientific precision. He recorded dates, times, exact descriptions of visions. He painted what he saw, transcribed what he heard. He created a phenomenology of the unconscious, a careful record of psychic events that could be studied and compared with other such records. This documentation matters because it shows that encounters with the unconscious follow patterns. The same archetypal figures appear across cultures and centuries. The process of descent, dismemberment, and rebirth repeats in countless variations. We live in an age of surfaces, of endless distraction, of curated personas and manufactured experiences. The deep psyche, the soul, the unconscious, whatever name we give it, remains largely unexplored territory for most people. We medicate away depression without asking what it might be trying to tell us. We flee from anxiety without wondering what transformation it might be announcing. Jung's Red Book stands as testament to another way. Rather than suppressing the darkness, he entered it. Rather than fearing the chaos, he engaged it. He discovered that within the most disturbing visions lay seeds of renewal, that the monsters of the psyche often guard treasures. The book teaches that wholeness requires descent. The ego must meet its shadow. The conscious mind must dialogue with unconscious depths. People who do this work, who face their depths with courage and patience, emerge more complete. The Red Book remains a dangerous text as it doesn't offer easy comfort or simple answers. Its pages are filled with beauty and terror, wisdom and warning. Jung himself worried about its publication, fearing it would be misunderstood, that people would imitate his journey rather than finding their own. Yet he also knew its importance. Near the end of his life, he said, "The years when I was pursuing my inner images were the most important in my life. In them, everything essential was decided." Carl Jung risked everything to map the underworld of the psyche. The Red Book reminds us that beneath our everyday consciousness lie depths we've barely begun to explore, that the darkness within contains seeds of transformation, that the journey to wholeness passes through territories most maps don't show. The book waits, red as blood, deep as night, for those ready to begin their own descent.